Corla. It's with tremendous sadness that I stand up again to contribute to hugely important statements on child abuse at certain education institutions, and specifically at Willow Park Junior School and Blackrock College, which are in the geographic heart of my constituency in Dún Laoghaire. And I want to speak about four things today. First and foremost, the survivors. Secondly, the broader school community in my constituency, and three things. And thirdly, the institutional and state response and clerical abuse more generally in Ireland. May I first and most importantly, as every other deputy already has, offer my deepest concern and sympathies to the survivors of this abuse, to each of them, to the physical and emotional pain that they suffered as children, to the damaged memories and damaged relationships, to the secrecy forced upon them, to the totally unjustified but often described shame put upon them through absolutely no fault of their young innocent selves, to the burden that they have had to carry through their adult lives, to the ways that they have found to cope and to manage, to the bravery they found to highlight the abuse done to them by vicious, vile men for whom no punishment can ever be sufficient. I want to really acknowledge the role of RTE documentaries and also the Joe Duffy Show in bringing the stories into the bright light. But it had already begun with victims speaking to each other through social media, through connecting and sharing and amplifying each other's experience. Of the many, many survivors who have so bravely made their experience public, let me pay tribute to Mark and David Ryan, Aidan Moore, Edward Heron, John Coulter, Corey McMahon, Louis Hoffman and Philip Fedis, to name but some. They have given the freedom to others to recollect and to disclose if they have wished to talk or not talk, and they have pulled back a most distasteful veil over a violent and vicious past. As they have said, and what has been said in this House now, what is needed now is a victim or survivor-centred, survivor-led process that enables the best of reparation and healing available. And I acknowledge, as the Minister has, that will be different for different people. And I would urge Government in its communication to survivors to continue to reflect on what model may best meet most needs. And I know the Minister has said she is doing this. My own view is that a strong scoping exercise and a strengthening of the impact of the confidential committee within the inquiry model may, I stress may, help give so much greater weight to the stories told by the survivors than previous inquest models, and the stories told by the survivors who were voiceless in their abuse but need not be voiceless anymore. Their voices are the ones to direct the next stages now, and I really am pleased to hear this approach from the Minister. The second thing I want to acknowledge is the school community. This is a broader school community that is hurting very, very deeply. Willow Park and Blackrock College are located in my constituency. I have spoken to current parents in the school today, to parents who were students there 20 and 30 years ago, some of whom now have children there today, to people who left the school many years ago. And my son goes to the school, my nephews, my husband's family, they all attend or attended to the school in some way. And indeed there are families right across my constituency, from Booterstown to Blackrock to Shankill to Foxrock, who have a connection with the school, a brother, an uncle, a family member. It is a school that has genuinely embedded across the community through so many different families. So many people have a connection, current or in the past. And I'm saying to you that everybody in that community has been impacted by these revelations of abuse. There are people, of course, who knew directly already, through personal experience, through family experience. Some people knew less. They knew of things that had happened to friends or family, but had absolutely no idea of the broader scale. Some people knew nothing, and yet they voiced suspicions about this priest or that in the past. And let us not forget, most importantly, that there are some on the school campus, or were on the school campus, who knew really quite a lot and did nothing and said nothing. But from my interactions as a constituency TD for Dún Laoghaire and as part of that school community, what I am seeing through the many, many volumes of communications that have happened in the most direct way through email and in the most innocuous ways through, running onto at the edge of the parents' pitch at the rugby or the soccer in Blackrock over the past number of weeks. What it seems to me is that most of the community, most of the broader school community, genuinely didn't know and are now coming to terms with the fact that this happened, perhaps even while they were there, that they're only understanding now the real pain that their peers went through and what they experienced. And I want to say to the Dáil that this is a community that is hurting. I want to acknowledge, appropriately, but hurting. I want to acknowledge the response of the Blackrock Past People's Union, which appears to me to have tried to take steps to offer total solidarity to those survivors and the community. It might seem like a small thing in the round, but their immediate cancellation of their annual lunch, for example, I thought was an important gesture available to them, a symbol of solidarity. And ironically, there was some criticism actually of having cancelled the lunch because people actually wanted to come together to be able to discuss this as a community and to discuss this openly. And I understand that. But overall, the decision, in my view, is the correct one. You just simply cannot carry on as normal when something of this nature has come out, and it was an appropriate reaction. But I took heart from the fact that actually the criticism was there, that people really wanted to come together to talk. Part of the school community, of course, are the boys and young men who are in the school today. Boys from 8 to 18 and younger, but 8 to 18 are certainly well able to discern what is being discussed about their own school in the media and in other places. And first and foremost, there is an essential measure to protect all of the boys from harm from any source. And I'll come back to that. But there is also a measure of care needed by the school community broadly about how this is discussed with them, particularly the younger boys, to ensure that they manage this news about their own community well, and that crucially everybody learns from it for the future. So how do we respond? What is the future? As I said, the first thing we need to do is ensure the protection of the boys there and in every other school there today, in Willow Park, in Blackrock, and indeed in every school across Ireland. On this, I just want to say to the House that I have deeply interrogated the current principal of Willow Park, who's there just since 2016. Initially, as a parent through the Willow Park Parents Association, with whom there's been a very deep engagement on behalf of parents, very extensive information made available, but also, of course, as a local TD with a deep concern about the school and the school community. I've deeply interrogated him in person as a TD, and I do believe that the boys there are well protected and cared for today. I know the principal has made himself available to any parent who wants to talk in more detail, and I am confident that any information in his hands will be made available to any inquiry established or any model established by government, and that his approach is one of total openness. But I think it's important to say that the boys today are protected because of a genuine cultural shift from secrecy to transparency generally in Ireland, and in particular the response, if I may say, of the government, specifically Minister Frances Fitzgerald, and I think Minister O'Gorman referenced this earlier. Minister Frances Fitzgerald in 2011 stood up to the Catholic Church and told them she was legislating for mandatory sexual abuse reporting, no matter what. And that followed the publication of the Cloyne report, which documented abuse in that diocese up to 2007. I was there with Minister Fitzgerald, and as recently as 2011, the Catholic Church tried to resist mandatory reporting of child sexual abuse, using the completely useless legal argument and even more morally bankrupt argument that the value of the seal of the confessional somehow competed with with reporting of child sexual abuse. I was Minister Fitzgerald's special advisor at the time, and it is to her eternal credit, supported by Taoiseach Enda Kelly, that she faced down in those weeks the men of the Church and went ahead in no uncertain terms thereafter and put the children first principles, which had hitherto been guidelines only, into a statutory mandatory reporting space. That was among the cultural shifts in government that really mattered, and the measures outlined by Minister Foley and her contribution, and indeed Minister O'Gorman, Children First Act and the various processes, they follow that cultural shift away from what children knew then, and in the words of a Willow Park graduate in the Irish Times on the 20th of November, like everyone of that generation, I knew instinctively that any complaint against a priest would be futile, and they would likely assume it was my fault. So the real measure of response now is how we atone for the secrecy and hurt of the past. And I would say that the only acceptable response now is that every school involved, indeed every congregation, every order, whatever the structures, whatever, I'm past caring about the distinctions. The only appropriate response now is an acknowledgement, as Deputy Batchik has said, of wrongdoing, of a new openness, of honesty, of humility, of accuracy. In my view, every record should be made proactively available. Powers of compellability should not be necessary with institutions that are proactively falling over themselves, offering to help. These are the basic respects that are needed. This is what survivors deserve, this is what the school community deserve, and this is what the standard of protection of children for the future deserve. Irrespective of the model agreed by government next, that is the way for schools and congregations to genuinely lead now into the future, where their past has been such a very sorry shame. The rape and torture by grown men on young boys that happened in Willow Park and Blackrock was not limited to those schools, nor any of the schools discussed here today. It was a feature of Ireland of that time, and we hope it will never ever be repeated. There can be nothing worse than having that secret hanging over you your whole life and into your whole adult life. Much of this did happen at a different time in a different culture. We were affected by this terrible, terrible evilness right across Ireland. It was so hurtful and so damaging for the children, who as adults are naturally so still affected by it. My heart goes out to them and to their families, their parents, their siblings and their friends. But as we move to the future, we must do so in a way that shows absolutely no remnant of the tragedy and violence of the past.